So Rodney, people like us on YouTube. We're huge. We're huge in Germany, like David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I guess 20 views. Oh no, that's episode one. I don't know how YouTube works. How's this
I
work?
mean, I know you watched it 20 times.
I did not. I did
Uh,
not. There we
so
go. All right. All right. So here's a stat for you. Episode one, 20 views. Episode two, 25 views. Episode three, 112 views.
okay,
So I think people switched from
yeah.
Spotify. Yeah.
We need to re-record episode one and not read the scripts.
Yeah, exactly.
My kids watched it and were just brutal.
I'm way better when I'm not reading.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Yeah. That's why I hate I don't mind standing up in front of a crowd and talking like off the cuff about whatever. It doesn't bother me at all. But the second somebody says you have to say these exact words, it like blows my mind. That was a big thing at Indigo, right? Every time I talked, I had to say these very specific things, and that is one of my many downfalls.
So you know how to fix that?
How's that?
Practice. So
Yeah.
option school, right? So we used to teach when I was at Cargill. Mark Tracy taught me how to teach the Cargill option school. And so we taught options to farmers, but we also taught it internally. You went to that class
Yep.
a couple times. And we also taught to the Cargill like traders, like the global traders. Um, Obviously the class shifts depending on who the audience is. We used to go really deep on what we call hedging path dependent options for the actual traders, and then scale things back from there. But
Scale
um,
it all the way back for guys like me, right? So,
all the way back, a lot of stick figures, yeah.
yeah.
We draw you a map on like where the corn goes, and
Exactly.
here's what a straight line is, Rodney.
Right.
Uh, but when so Mark had a lot of experience with public speaking and had gotten coaching from various areas, and the but so like for the version you went to, there was actually about 10 hours, 10 to 12 hours of real content, depending on what we were hitting on.
Sure.
Like so it was 2 days, and so
Yep.
like 2 6 hour, 2 days 6 hours content. Almost all of that, and I could probably still do all of it without the slides. Like I could
Mm.
talk you through because we basically, and so the reason we went and memorized what you were doing, because with that, the reason that you do that is one, there was a lot of work putting to like what are the important points to hit, like what are the exact things to say, what's the
Right.
least confusing way to explain what this
Sure.
concept is. But the other really, you get two big benefits out of that. One of them is you don't appear stiff like we do on the intros, right? And but the other reason, part of the reason you don't feel stiff is you don't have to think about it. And so then when you're in the middle of teaching and somebody asks some random question or somebody makes a joke or whatever, you can jump in on that and engage in that in a like, and it's easy, and you don't get all thrown off about what you were doing, right? So it
Right.
allows you to stay present in the moment as opposed to thinking about what am I supposed to say here. It reminded me a lot of wrestling practice. You know,
Yeah. Well, for
drill,
sure.
right? Like
Yeah.
drill. We're gonna do single leg takedowns for 45 minutes. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
If you had to think about how to reverse a single leg takedown, you're dead,
Yeah.
right? You have to. Yeah, I agree. So, like, how much time did you spend like in front of a mirror
Oh
getting ready?
man. So I don't know the answer to that, but it was so so Mark taught me how to teach option school, and that was a ton of time, but it was spread out over like a year.
Sure.
And so there were times when it was super dense and times when it was light. So I couldn't tell you the total number of hours. There was a year where I taught a chunk on behavioral economics as part of the old Cargill Pro pricing tour.
Yep.
Um,
I remember
it,
it well. It's one of my favorite stories to tell, the flying monkeys. We'll cover it sometime.
yeah.
Yeah.
And before Jimmy Fallon, by the way, like that was
Yeah, I
pre
know. That
Jimmy
was
Fallon.
crazy. Yeah.
I'm OG Screaming Monkey. So, uh,
Yeah.
but so when I worked on that I think that piece was like, it was like 45 minutes was what that was.
Hmm.
And I spent an ungodly amount of time. Like it was like in terms of researching what to do, putting it together, revising it, practicing it to the point where it was a smooth thing. It it took me like I was working a ton of overtime on it because I was like I am terrible at this. Like I was
Yeah.
and so I couldn't tell you the total amount of time, but afterwards I was like, okay, people do this all the time. There must be a better way to do this than what I'm doing. Like I'm so
Sure.
bad at it. So when I went and dug into it, what I actually found was if you are doing a presentation or a talk that is supposed to be like tier one, right? It's the most important audience, whatever, to have it as tight as you can be in general, it takes about 40 times as long as whatever that presentation length actually is to do it right.
Wow.
So like, and that's like 40 hours of real work. And now it's end to end, right? Then that's like from writing it to revising it and then practice. But the bulk of that is practice, which has revision wrapped up in it.
Yeah, right.
Um, so that was a really helpful kind of calibration for me. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm bad, but I'm not quite as terrible as I thought I was. And
Yeah.
also I was like, it's okay for me if I get asked to do this again. I'm way more comfortable with the idea, like, oh, I'm going to spend work time on it. Like, I'm not making up for some, like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, that's a hard thing to do, right? When you're an individual contributor at work to practice giving some speech in a mirror. Do you use a mirror? Is that the
uh,
strategy?
I mean, you can. I mean, these days I record it if I'm going to do
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
because that lets me again focus on what I'm doing, and then
Right.
go back and look at it. I don't know. We it's been a whole lot. Not I'm not obviously not a professional speaker, but I think a lot of the stuff I learned over the years, was from folks like that. The only
Yeah.
other hot tip I use is when people use vocal fillers. So when I was at Indigo, one of the coaches, I knock on wood, I'm pretty good about not having a ton of vocal fillers. But what they said is if you say like, right, that's a really common one. Like my 14-year-old when they're excited about something, it's about every fourth word. And I'll
Yeah.
and I'll
Yeah.
and I'll just tell them like you need to stop because I have no idea what you're saying other than the word like right now. Like
Yeah.
slow down.
Because it just clouds everything else,
Yeah,
right? That's my
yeah, I
stuff.
get distracted. But they said what you it was the most counterintuitive thing I've ever heard in this kind of stuff was go practice your thing and say whatever your vocal say like as many times as you can while you're doing it. It's like
Mhm.
what? And then it's crazy. Like people just it kills it.
Yeah.
And then we all dip back into our bad habits, but it's a really easy way to get rid of that if you find yourself doing it. There we go. Rodney and Gabe's hot tips on public speaking. That's what
Yeah.
everybody comes for, baby.
It's funny. I hired a coach at one point, and I had something. I think I say a lot. I think that's mine. And what he did was he had me build this like little Excel thing where every time I heard myself say I had to push, I just clicked my mouse. So nobody in the world knew what was happening. But I had this like running tally of how often I said and dude, it's crazy. It like stops it immediately. Right? Once you keep track of it, once you see how crazy it is, you stop. And then it comes back into your vocabulary, unfortunately. Yeah.
Back to memorizing, right? When you're practicing and people look smoothest because they've memorized what they're doing. Vocal fillers are space to think.
Mm.
Like that's what we're doing is adding pauses so that we can think
Mm.
more. We don't need a ton of time, but if a
Right.
word's missing, most humans are pretty uncomfortable with silence. So we use that filler to create the space to think about it. So again, if you've practiced a lot, you look smoother even though you're reciting something.
Yeah.
Um,
Makes sense.
so
All right. More practice for Rodney.
well,
I got a
only if
presentation
it's important, man.
I got a presentation I got to give in a couple weeks, so I should start on it sooner than later. Although it's hard with grain marketing because things change so quickly, right? Like I mean, again, there's the points you want to touch on, I'm sure you can nail down.
Well, I
Um,
don't know, man. What are you presenting on in a couple weeks?
I'm not really sure. So I've got a customer who they do this very interesting thing they've done as long as I've known them. They invite a bunch of other farms from all over the world, really, in to their place, and they spend 2 days together. They open up their books. They show them everything that's going on, right? They like It's almost like these other guys are running an audit on your farm and they just talk about it, right? So, hey, why are you doing this? What are you thinking here? And they kind of rotate around and do that for each other's farm. So I can't remember how many people there are there because I think they bring people or whatever, but there's probably 6 or 10 farm operations that do this.
Is there a name for that group?
It's not the one you're thinking of.
Well, it strikes me like there's a association in Argentina that does that,
Okay.
where
Hmm.
the farmers get into it and then they get broken up into groups, like peer groups, and then that's exactly what they do.
Oh,
Um,
so it could be a part of that then.
that's
I
a
didn't.
yeah, I can't remember the name of it. When we get
Yeah.
Cello on, we can ask him
Okay.
or
Yeah.
Dario. Um,
Yeah. So like they this operation invited me in probably 10 years ago now to give a tour of all the grain locations. So here in Dwight, Illinois, we're like 30 minutes from every export and processing market known to man. So it's really interesting. Like,
that's
put
bold claims, Rodney, but all right, all right.
I mean, we can go into it, but essentially, if you put a cooler of beer in the back of a bus and drive around for 4 hours, you can see container markets like the actual export market, river market, BNSF and NS rail markets, so east and west, ethanol plant, and yeah, I don't know. I guess that's about it, but that's pretty good.
I mean,
I mean,
it's
that's
don't get me wrong, like that is a good
yeah.
chunk. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of parts of the country that you just haul to the river, right? And that's
right.
it. So we're lucky to have that. So anyway, these guys invited me down to give a talk. They left it super open-ended, like, hey, talk about something relevant with the grain markets. So that's the thing. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to cover. Probably talk a little bit about pitfalls that I see farmers run into, try to give them some cautionary tales there. But I think for the most part, those guys want somebody to say, what's going on in the market? Why is it doing what it's doing? And how should I manage my risk, right? So that'll be part of it, which is reckless when I don't know anything about anybody's operation except for the guy I'm with. But I'll tell you, the one thing that's cool about this very specific presentation is, I'll for sure ask this guy before I do it, but they're super comfortable in that forum to like open up their books, right? So I can
Mhm.
say, hey, farmers generally, instead of saying, hey, farmers generally can do this, in this situation, I can say, hey, because this guy's got this risk profile that you all know about and you just saw, we're going to manage that this way. So it's interesting. It makes it easier to talk to a group, I think.
Do you have like when so I mean we talk a lot about the general position that as a farmer you're long the crop till you're
Yeah.
dead. So,
Yeah.
super fun.
And even actually,
Even
technically, if it's
after. Yeah, your
around
your
much
entire
after.
family's long the crop forever. Congratulations.
Yeah, right.
Way to buy an acre.
Yeah.
Um and and so is there yeah, well, so we talk about that and then we talk about how cash flow management is, and I don't know how much we've talked about it here, but when we
Mhm.
talk about working with individuals, we talk about cash flow management a lot as a primary driving force. Um, are there a set of principles that you walk into the crop year with, like before, or walk into a new customer with, like, okay, here's here's the framework I want to start with, like is that's
Ah,
kind of perennial?
super funny that you asked that because when you left last week, you asked me for the hardest question I had all week.
Yeah,
And so
two
I'll go to
weeks, two
that.
weeks. You had 2 weeks for the hardest
Two
question,
weeks,
by the way.
sorry, 2 weeks. So one, a guy called me afterwards and asked me to talk about or my thoughts on how artificial intelligence is going to replace everybody inside the ag industry. He felt like he was like fooling me into that being the hardest question. So thanks, Sean. I don't think that's a topic for today. But another buddy of mine, he does an ag tech company. He was really trying to model out how farmers should think about making sales, right? So exactly that. And he's like, "Hey, how's the guy think about that? Like, what's the model? How could I put that into an Excel spreadsheet?" And it's like, you know, I think you're gonna have lots of thoughts on this, but I view it like this. There is a problem coming at us which is combines in the field, right? So like the
Okay.
way I position this to a farmer, really to trick them into selling, because I think selling is the least risky thing they can do, is hey, you've got a problem coming at you, and that's 200,000 bushel of corn in October, right? Or
Hmm.
whatever. And that problem doesn't feel like a big problem in February, typically, right? So since it's a delayed problem, I don't really have to deal with that problem unless I see like a big opportunity that, I'm really excited about. And then it's like, okay, cool, I'll lock in that price.
Hmm.
But as time moves on, and like this is the pressure I'm feeling at this exact moment, actually, for the guys that are working with me, is like, man, the market hasn't presented a whole lot of opportunities. We are in a like seasonally volatile time, but like since that time is starting to compress, the opportunities that I'm looking for are lowering, right? Like suddenly I'm not so wide-eyed. So it's like, we've had tons of conversations about time and how time affects the way you view the world. To me, that's like probably the step one is how much time do I have left before I have this problem, right? Which is October. It's a terrible way to position it, I know.
Yeah. Well, uh, I'm trying to. Well, so I have a couple quick hits. So one, I would say we trick farmers into doing it. We nudge them. Nudge them.
Yeah,
There's a
that's how
there's a
I talk.
great
I
book.
joke around, right? But I'm trying to be upfront with them, like, hey, my job here is to help you make sales.
Well, there's this concept of paternal libertarianism.
Eternal libertarianism.
Yeah. So there's like a version of the libertarian that exists today, which is like a really weird, like, like what you see on like the internet.
Yeah,
It kind of went off in a weird direction. The original idea that I'm familiar with around being a libertarian is the idea that, like, look, if you're not hurting anybody, you should be kind of
sure.
free to go do your own thing. Now,
Yeah,
there's a big question there in terms of, at what point does, hurting individuals is pretty straightforward, but there's a question where from a commons perspective, you may be causing damage, right, to wider society. So it gets fuzzy. It's a really interesting libertarianism on its own is a fascinating political philosophy when you're like 15,
sure.
as you better understand how hard it is to understand a complex world. It loses a lot
Yeah,
of its value or you know insight or wisdom. The so paternal libertarianism is this really I forget the guy's name. He wrote the guy that wrote the book Nudge. I think he's out of
oh
University
yeah,
of Chicago.
yep.
And it's this idea that what we want to do is frame things up so people make decisions along kind of what is the best practice there, right? So it might be whatever, selling equal amounts of grain every 6 weeks
Yep.
between now and harvest, right? I don't know,
Yep.
something like that. And so you would try to set things up so that that's like the default path, and that's going to happen unless they take an action to stop it.
Yep.
You don't make it hard to stop, right? Like totally, like, hey, oh, you want to cancel the sale today? Great, done.
Yep.
We're not going to do it. Um, but the reason you do that is people are really anchored to defaults.
Yep.
And so there used to be a ton of research around 401ks. So people would in 401ks been around for a long time. Great way to save for retirement. Giant company, you join, start sticking your paycheck in that 401k. You look at it, when you're headed
It's
in.
like default, right? Like, I mean,
Well,
they match 3% or whatever you put in, right?
yeah, yep. So it's a yes. So if you haven't worked in a company with a 401k, you basically a part of your paycheck goes into savings that goes into the market, and it's tax advantage one way or another when retirement comes around. There's a couple different spins on it, and most companies, if they have a program, will also chip in something if you're putting money in. And so, like, every financial advisor in the world will tell you, the sooner you start saving, the better. Like, tax advantage, yep, take advantage of it, put it in. Everybody knows it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Everybody knows you should be doing it. And for a long time, I think the adoption rate was like 20% on average.
Hmm.
And that's with like companies were like, please save for retirement. Like we don't
Yeah, we don't want, we're getting out of the pension
we're
system,
getting out of
right?
the pension thing. Like this is the thing for you. Like please do this. Like and you know and so there was all this work to try to get people to do it, but it was always opt in. You had to sign. You had to like choose to be in the program, and so adoption was 20%. And then they flipped it around so that by default you're in it, and it's really easy to opt out. Most do you want out of the program? Okay, then you have to choose that, but it's like literally like a checkbox most places.
Right.
But the adoption like went up to like 90%,
Hmm.
right? More than
Hmm.
flipped. Um,
Yeah.
and so defaults are really strong. And so that's what I was asking, like if there's a framework or a set of principles, because if you set up like whatever, if you think those decisions should be time gated or price gated, setting up all the things to like make that happen so that you have to take an action to stop it makes it way
Hmm.
more likely that your
Hmm.
plan gets done. Um,
Yeah, I got it. So like I had a guy just this week say I think his magic date was like July 15th. He said, "Hey, look, I've been farming a long time. Anything I don't have sold by July 15th, I regret." Right? That starts the downward slide. So what he could do is like put a time order that says sell all my corn on July 15th unless I say don't. Right?
yeah,
That's what you're talking about.
yeah,
So super easy to cancel the order, no
yeah.
problem. But yeah. And there's something about doing it ahead of time that makes it less what?
Well, if I tell you I'm going to do, let's see.
Yeah.
So there's like stages of commitment, right? If I think I'm going to do something but I don't tell anybody about it, I'm the least likely to do it. If I think I'm going to do something and then I tell you about it, I'm way more likely to do it
Hmm.
because as a human, I would like to appear to be consistent and logical.
I
So if
see.
I tell you I'm going to do something, the consistent and logical thing is for me to come through and do what I've said I'm going to do.
Hmm.
Humans get real nervous when people don't do what they say they're going to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and so putting in an actual order, right, just takes that to another level.
Yeah.
Um, that's yeah. Um,
Hmm.
it's a lot of the behavioral economic stuff we've talked about over the years is really about figuring out how to get yourself out of your own way.
Yeah, man. So it's funny that you reacted the way you did because when I say trick farmers into selling, like to me, that's my version of the
Yeah,
stuff that you've taught me, right?
totally,
Which is like
absolutely.
make it easy to do it. I don't know. It's probably a little tongue in cheek, but
Well, I talk about manipulation all the time, right? Like
yeah,
it's got a really negative context, but the reality is, like you, again, one of the things with behavioral economics is as you understand how you can affect how decisions get made around some of these behavioral challenges that human brain has, it there's almost a level of responsibility of making sure you're being both really transparent about what you're doing. It
yeah,
like, hey, I'm going to do this. You're going to react to it this way. Like, this is how I think I'm going to get you to do this. I,
sure.
I bet that's exactly what you do, right?
That is what,
Like, hey,
yeah.
man, I'm going to trick you into selling right now. Like, you
Well,
probably say those words. Yeah,
I literally said it today to some guys
yeah.
that yeah, exactly.
It's totally like, and I'm 100% on board with that. Because really because really what you're saying is based on everything you told me, I think you actually want to sell today, but I realize you're having a hard time pulling that trigger. So let's
Yeah.
figure out if we can get yourself out of your own way.
Yeah, how do we motivate you to do
Right?
that?
Trick that part of you that's causing trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
So yeah. So what exactly was the hardest question? Like what should I do for the July 15th or what was
No, I mean, I'd say that the hard question was, hey, how should I think about the timing of my sales, right? So, like, what percent sold should I be over time? And that's tricky, right? Because again, like I'm saying, if we see big opportunities in February, I'm probably going to be like pretty aggressive. We haven't seen those, and I don't know how much we've talked about it, Gabe. We're like most farmers are below break even on corn and soybeans right now based on current yields. So like now we're getting close to the point where it's like, hey, what if July 15th gets here and we haven't seen an opportunity yet and now we just drift lower, right? And it's funny, I have a better time this time of year um like wrapping my head around corn's down 10, right? Based on some news. like corn down 10 feels like a buying opportunity to me a lot of times, right? Like the market's going to overreact based on some big news and then it comes back. What I'm actually really nervous about this time of year is this like slow drift down, right? Where
Mm.
like you lose a
It's
penny today, you lose a penny
the
tomorrow.
proverbial frog in the pot, right?
Yeah, frog in the pie, exactly right. Yeah, so it's you know, I think that's the toughest thing about grain marketing, especially this year, because I'd say most people are behind on sales. It's not profitable at the moment, on it for any new sales. And we're supposedly in the middle of what is typically a very volatile time for futures prices, and we tend to see highs of the year come in this time of year, and we're like, probably 25 cents off the high right now. And most guys' budgets were hoping for like a new high, you know, and we just haven't seen it.
Hope is not a plan, Rodney.
Hope is not a plan. It's not. Yeah.
Couldn't hold it in. So
Yeah.
I don't want to go too deep on volatility today, just because I
That's
think
right.
we've got Kevin Bauer joining us next week.
That's right. Really
Uh,
excited. First guest, Kevin
yeah,
Bauer. We're going to talk
uh, and
volatility.
and the timing is perfect. But I will remind everybody that there's two types of volatility. There's expected volatility and there's historical volatility. And so when we think about its norm, so the market expects volatility. So volatility might the volatility value that's priced in the market today may actually be quite high, even if nothing's happening in the market,
Mm.
because
Mm.
there is an anticipation of weather having some sort of material impact on production and obviously on supply. So it's really important not to confuse what's happening today with whether or not the market expects there to be volatility still. And I think at this point in time, there's still, really we're looking at whenever pollination is going to hit.
Yeah, we've got 6 weeks. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
yeah.
so uh, that's from a expected volatility perspective. That's when that peaks out. But also, volatility is not correlated to price.
That's the part that gets me every time, man. I know that and I just can't internalize it. So refresh me again. How is volatility not related to price?
Well, so again, volatility is expected market movement. The number itself is actually so the technical definition is it is the annualized standard deviation of returns of the underlying.
God, that's
Um,
hot.
so again, we're not going to go through the math right now, but that's actually what it is. And when we look at implied volatility, so if you're looking at buying a call option or something, a core component of the price of that call option is the expected volatility over the lifetime of that call. And it really is market movement, not direction. And so I don't think we'll ever go through like dynamic hedging or delta hedging on this on this podcast. Maybe someday, but that's a pretty in depth topic. But the reason I bring that up is an option trader, which I used to be a professional option trader, isn't really focused on what direction the market's going. Uh, we 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 trade
Right.
volatility, not direction. And so you can hedge out an options exposure to changes in the market price, and really just what you're taking on is risk of the magnitude of that change.
So you're really just making a volatility play. I
Uh-huh.
think volatility is going to go up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the market thinks there's too much. The market's expecting too much or too little vol. So let me
Yeah.
go in there. It, yeah. Again, not really relevant to most
Yeah.
people, but the people that are setting the prices, right, that are making markets and those options, that's what they're thinking about.
Well, and I think where it's relevant to farmers is exactly why we want Kevin on the show is, hey, selling options looks really attractive when volatility is low because you want that extra premium, right? It feels like you want that extra premium. When in reality, that like an option trader would be buying options at that time, right?
Maybe if they felt like the volatility was low. Depends on a
Right.
lot of things,
Yeah.
Rodney.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Hey, I will ask, so what you're telling me is if over the course of 100 days, the futures price changed up or down every 10 or 10 cents, but stayed inside of that range, for 100 days versus just like linearly went up a penny every day for those 100 days, the narrow 10-cent band would be higher volatility, right?
Yep.
But lower price, obviously, after 100 days.
Lower market price.
Yeah, lower market price. Yeah. Cannot wrap my head around that. I know it's true. But it's hard.
It's just math, baby.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Um, let's see. Last week or 2 weeks ago, you made a bold statement
I
that
did.
if you've got crop insurance, you're always better off selling. I don't know if I was exactly right, but why don't you lay out what the claim was?
Yeah, so I think the claim is if you have crop insurance, and again, specifically revenue protection, right, on your acres. Um, in the case of, well, just that it protects you if the market rallies and you don't raise the bushels. So what I'm saying is most farmers' biggest fear is they sell bushels they don't have.
Mhm.
And what I'm saying is if you sell bushels that seemed profitable when you sold them, and ultimately you were short on bushels and the market went up, which is the worst case scenario, your guarantee, your revenue guarantee actually goes higher,
Mhm.
right? Which means like I'm making more money, right, in a shortfall situation than if I had the crop. Now, you're always better off selling the high of the market. That is, we can't compare it.
I mean, the least controversial statement ever.
I don't know. Somebody's gonna argue with that. Let me share my
Oh
train
boy,
of thought.
if somebody wants to let us know what the argument is against selling the high, I, I, I have a lot to learn.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
I get it. Okay, so I put together this spreadsheet. So can you see it?
Oh boy, yes. So for those of you
You don't
just on
like
the
it?
audio, Rodney's got a sweet Excel spreadsheet up.
Yeah, you don't like it. I think you're making fun of me here with
No,
it.
I'm not.
Plain Jane.
It's
Okay, so fictitious corn farmer taking revenue protection insurance has 1,000 acres of corn.
mhm,
All right. His APH, so his historical production, averages 200 or yeah, 200 bushel per acre. So he gets that number from his insurance company based on history.
mhm.
And then he can pick how much coverage he wants, really up to 85%. There's ways to get that higher, but really traditionally up to 85%. So in this and this spring, the spring price, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, was set during the month of February. So December futures during the month of February. I confirmed since 2 weeks ago that I was right on that price. It came in at 470. Okay. So that's the guarantee. So this particular farmer is guaranteed when he planted the crop 170,000 bushel at $4.70,
Okay, and
giving him
170,000 bushels is the acres times the APH, the 5 year average or whatever,
that's
uh,
right.
and then taking 85% of that total bushels. Okay.
Exactly right. And then so when I multiply those guaranteed bushels times the price, that gives me 799,000 revenue guarantee, or probably easier to digest, 799 per acre, right?
Okay. Yep.
Make sense?
It makes sense. I'm guaranteed to $799 an acre, full stop.
Yep. Okay, so let's go scenario one. And I'm going to say this is the scenario that usually happens. Okay. Uh, guy ends up beating his APH. So
Hmm.
in this case, I did 225 bushels, what he
Hmm.
raised. That's because of a trend line yield lag, right? Like when you're looking back in history, that happens a lot. Harvest price. So we're using October, the month of October. Sorry, the month of October for December futures to calculate the harvest price.
And Rodney
So if
was
you
right. That is true for everybody.
you checked, all
I
right. I
did
didn't
check.
check.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wanted to be right, but I wasn't quite.
So if you look back at any historical values, it's going to tell you, you know better than me, 8 times out of 10 that the harvest price is the low.
I think that's right.
Yeah. Harvest price being October, right?
Hmm.
So again, low price here at $4. So I raised 225,000 bushel. Okay. Then I said, all right, I sold a bunch of those, kind of up to my guarantee here, right? So 160,000 bushel, I was guaranteed 170. Sold that at 450. Now at harvest, I've got 65,000 left to sell.
65,000 bushels. Yeah.
Bushels. That's right.
Okay.
Yep. All right, now we get into revenue. So as we talked last week, the revenue guarantee adjusts based on the higher of the spring price or the harvest price. So in this instance, the harvest price is the higher or is the lower price. So my guaranteed stayed the same. My adjusted guarantee is still
Right. So
$799
back in
per.
the spring when we did all that math, we said we were guaranteed $799 per acre. And so it turns out with my higher yield, even with the lower price, I'm going to make about $900 an acre.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yep.
From
And
from an insurance calculation perspective.
that's exactly right. Yep. Um, I've got my grain sales revenue. So what I did was my 160,000 times 450.
Well, so I guess let's draw a line under that. So to be clear, so at this point, insurance is done. Insurance is done. They did the math.
Yeah,
They said,
that's right.
hey, your revenue is going to exceed the $800 or the $799. Like, thanks for the check, for
Yep.
your revenue insurance. We'll see you next spring.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, no payment here.
And
So I
then
sold,
okay, on actual farm revenue.
yep. So I sold this 160,000 bushels at 450. That comes to 720,000 that I've locked in, right, during
Hmm.
the price of the year. And then I've got this 65,000 that I'm valuing at $4 here today.
Hmm.
Gives me $980, $1,000 or $980 per acre.
Got it. Okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
Um,
So this is the scenario where people are thrilled with you, Rodney. Thanks for tricking me into selling
thank
earlier.
God. Yeah, exactly right. This is
Uh,
good. Yep.
Because yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
one thing I think I should point out that I didn't before. So 799 is my guarantee.
Hmm.
Actual, which is probably not labeled correctly, which I know drives you nuts, is uh the revenue that my insurance company is going to recognize, right? So
Yes.
they're saying, "Hey, you made $900 an acre." But because I sold 160,000 bushel at 50 cents above that, there's $80 an acre more profit in those sales, right? So this is like perfect scenario, as you said. This is like I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Make sense? Nothing controversial here. Okay. Dramatic effect. I hit him.
Oh
Hit the picks.
man.
All right. So scenario two. Yeah, here we go. So dramatic price decrease, right? And I've got a yield of 225 bushel. Um, raised 225,000 bushels. So not a lot's changed here. Really, what's changed is that dramatic lower price.
Right.
Right.
So far, Ronnie, you're saying scenario two, the harvest price is 50 cents lower than scenario one and a buck 20 lower than the spring price average, which is the same for everything.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay.
So in this instance, so we'll skip down to the bottom here. Guarantee stayed the same again. Spring price is higher than October, so guarantee stays the same. But I only raised $788 worth of crop, right? So that's 350 now
Hmm.
times my guarantee of 170,000 bushel gets me 788. So I do qualify for an indemnity payment from my
And
insurance.
right. So just to be super clear, we're taking harvest price of 350 times that actually much higher yield than the trend line
Ah, sorry.
than the
That's
trend
right.
line yield, right?
That's right. Yep.
And so in scenario one, the harvest price had fallen, but not so far as to overtake the gain from the increased production versus APH. Scenario two, the market's fallen so far that it's eaten up the gains from the additional yield.
Yep.
And so when they do that calculation, 85% of 350 times 225, or are they doing 350 times?
350 times 225. Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
So calculate. adjusters coming in going 350 harvest price, but your yield was higher. We take 85% of that from a revenue guarantee perspective, and you came in at 788,000 across your farm from our
That's right.
insurance perspective. Um, you like that? I did that math. I divided or I multiplied 100,000 times 788.
That's
Okay.
why I stuck with. Yeah, that's good. That's why I did 1,000 acres and makes it much easier.
So okay. So after all said and done, from an adjuster perspective, I'm short $11 an acre.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. So I get that's where this indemnity payment's showing up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Add that to my, this doesn't change. So still sold $720,000 worth of grain. I'm getting less for my unsold grain here, right? That I was left over. So in the end, my price per acre isn't quite as good, right, as my lower one. That's because of this 50 cent difference here that the insurance made up for part of because, insurance, because it protected me on my revenue.
Right. So I guess just to talk people through it. Um, so again, scenario is the same where you pre-sold enough grain at a price that got you 720,000 bucks, marking the grain at that 350 a bushel price at harvest. And in this scenario, you're adding that indemnity payment on top, and that's 11,500 in this case. So
Yep,
so
that's
it's
right.
not just the previous grain sales and the unsold grain selling at 350. It's also that indemnity.
Exactly.
Um, there's somebody who used to work with talked about, insurance isn't going to make, it's never going to make you better off. But it's supposed to keep you whole. And so this seems like,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I would say that's why this scenario is why people view it as a put, right? That's
yeah,
why when people talk about it, they talk about it as a put.
absolutely.
And, we could change, like, let's do it. Let's say I didn't sell any bushels. See what happens here. Yeah, so
Well, if you don't sell any bushels and you've triggered that indemnity, you're just going to be brought back up to whatever your guarantee was, right? So
that's exactly right.
799.
So I'm 799. Where here I'm making the $900. That's because that extra revenue came from the 50 cents on the guaranteed bushels.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you're
Cool.
looking, you can make fun of Rodney because he did not update his math on the actual, or see, do you have the actual? The unsold grain value should be a lot higher when you've changed those numbers. I mean,
Yeah. All right.
Rodney's got some hard code stuff in here. It's bad
Let's
spreadsheet
do it.
practice, everybody.
Oh, it went up. Look at that. Let's see if this one did.
But it had grain sales revenue at, it's all right.
You take that back.
Do some control Z's in there.
Got it. Yeah, so it's it's working here. Yeah. Grain sales.
All right. All right.
Well,
Well, okay.
doesn't matter. All right, let's get to the worst case scenario. Actually the part that I'm most excited about.
He's got more hidden columns, y'all.
I hope it works. Okay, so scenario three here. Worst case scenario.
Well, hold on.
I-
You can't say at 550. Oh, the worst case because the yield's down. All right. All right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yields down, right? So there's some sort of drought and I'm struggling. Okay. So yield goes to 100 bushel. Again, I've talked about this. This is like the farmer's worst nightmare
This is
for a bunch of reasons, probably a lot of.
you come to me and say, Gabe, we should price some grain today, and this is what I'm scared of. This is when I say no. This is
This is
exactly what
what
I'm
is
worried about.
keeping.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, okay, so I'm short. That's bad. Harvest price. This is, in 2012, this is what happened, is the price went up because yields were bad, right? This isn't a local problem. This is like a national problem.
Mm-hmm.
I only raised 100,000 bushel. I sold 160 at 450, right? So nothing changed there. And not only do I not have any bushels left to sell, but these 60,000 bushels, I have to go back to my grain company and be like, bruh, sorry, I need to buy out of this contract, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Terrible scenario. hard conversations. Me and you have been through these conversations with
Nobody's
guys.
happy. Yeah.
Nobody's happy. But the reason I view crop insurance as a call option is because in this situation, now my guarantee actually goes up. So fall price is higher than the spring price. So now, boom, instead of being guaranteed 7.99 as I was in scenario one, I'm now guaranteed 9.35.
Hmm.
All right. Um, I only actually made $550, right? So that's 100 times the 550 according to insurance. That's going to give me, sorry, the math is, I'll slow down. Grain sales stay the same at 720,000. All right. I got to buy back 60,000 bushel at a dollar a piece.
Okay.
Right. So I sold it
At
for
four.
450. Current market's 550. That's my dollar on 60,000 bushels,
Hmm.
right? But now, since I only raised $550 per acre, according to insurance, I'm going to get an indemnity payment of 385,000, which now I see I should have brought that back to a dollars per acre. I guess $38 per acre. So in the end, I get a revenue of $1,045 per acre.
So,
And you can see that's the highest of all of these scenarios.
right, because net, and that's $1,045 per acre, even after having to buy back that 60,000 bushels that you were short on.
Exactly right. That's making good with all the people that I promised grain to. Yep.
Yeah. And this is even with, uh, I mean, what's fascinating here, right, is really to hit on the call option point. That 385 that's there is really like it was a call option written on top of what was sold.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right.
I
So
think you
what?
were. I was just trying to hit it in a different
No,
way, you know?
yeah. Thanks for clarifying it. Yeah. And what I'm saying is most people. So I'll come back to this. So scenario one. $4 corn, raised a good yield. When I view crop insurance as a put, this
Hmm.
is the strategy here, right?
Yeah.
Like essentially, leave it alone, don't do anything. Okay, in this scenario, we made 900 bucks. Fine, right?
Yeah.
And frankly, like, well, yeah, you can take this to, $2. And oh yeah, it takes me back to that 7.99. So I'm protected, right? But that's my minimum. Using it as a call option removes the risk associated with selling ahead of time, right?
Hmm.
Hopefully encourages or tricks a farmer into making those forward sales that look profitable, right?
Hmm.
And when it does, in the worst case scenario, this guarantee is actually going to go up. Now, I know somebody's going to say, yeah, but I shouldn't have sold it, right? Yeah, cool. 100% agree. If we didn't sell anything and or ended up selling at the high of the market, right? For sure I make more money in that scenario, right? Like, cool. It's just not a great strategy when you look at the odds, right?
Well, as our friend Jake likes to say,
Correct.
he, you can have good process with bad outcomes and bad process with good outcomes.
That's right.
And the challenge that we all face is um, seeing a good outcome from a bad process and recognizing it as a bad process.
Yep.
And I think what you're trying to show, like what you're laying out here, is a process that's a good process, right? It doesn't. At the end of the day, we're always trying to forecast the future, and we're not going to get it right. Like if there's one thing we know,
The
we're not
worst
going
thing.
to sell the high. We're not going to get that magical sale at the highest price. Some dude somewhere sold, three futures contracts at that high price. That's really about it.
Yeah.
And so trying to hold yourself against the idea of having accurately predicted the future is absurd. But
Yep.
that's actually the question we all ask ourselves. And so
Every single.
I know the role you're trying to play is, hey, you know what? I don't have a glass ball to look into and figure out what's happening, but I know how to run a good process from a risk management perspective. And even though it might be really painful having made some of those sales and the market's gone up and you're buying
Yep.
back the contract. The reality of it is, you know, you're not going to get 100% of the upside, but by the way, you're doing okay. Like, like if you made those sales and you thought it was profitable for you or it was a level you were comfortable with, you're actually still going to be better off.
That's right.
You won't be the best, but it'll be better.
Uh, Opportunity cost out the window, right? Or opportunity is gone in a lot of cases. The other thing that I'm always quick to point out here, Gabe, yes, I probably missed some opportunity by selling too early in this crop. If D's 25 is trading at 550, chances are D's 26 is trading at 530 or 540, right? Again, this is not market advice. I'm not predicting the spreads, but like it probably went up with it. And that's when I'd encourage guys, cool, man. Now let's lock in. God, we locked in 450 on D's 25 and made a little bit, right? Now let's go lock in 530 on D's 26, and it probably makes sense. So, any scenarios that I didn't cover here, Gabe, that you can think of?
I We don't need to walk through. I suspect there's a corner case that's probably a little more painful where we're right around an indemnity level that it maybe doesn't look quite as good. Um,
Could be. But I will say it always goes up. As
I
the
mean, to be
price.
fair, right? Like if we imagine what are the scenarios that might drive a market price to be much higher at harvest than it was in the spring, like again, which is like if that's happening, like it's on, right? It's not uh, because just like we were talking about volatility before, very few things are adding volatility into the December that you know what is now new crop, you know, moving into the old crop thing. Not a lot adding volatility into it at that time. We,
Exactly.
we don't see anything big again normally until we see spring planting.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I do think like bad scenario here probably Gabe is
Yeah,
low
$2
price,
is
low
real
yield.
bad.
What's that?
I said, yeah,
Yeah,
$2 is real bad.
I'm going extreme, right? Low price, low yield. Actually, I'm benefiting from a lower price here because I oversold and I'm buying back,
But
you
yeah.
know, at a profit. But you know, anyway, moral of the story.
Listen to Rodney.
Nah, don't listen to me,
Oh, don't
but
listen to Rodney.
cool. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing that.
I think the moral of the story is a good sale is always a good sale.
That's right.
It may not have been the best sale, but that's okay.
And crop insurance helps lower the risk in making that sale. That I think that's
Yeah.
like if I could buy a billboard with in summary, it's like, hey, your crop insurance protects you if you make a sale. And if you're thinking about it as a put, you're probably leaving some money on the table.
I was talking to somebody who has some pretty significant euro exposure, and so they've got about $200 million of euro exposure over the next 12 months, and
Hmm.
we're talking about hedging and like how
That's
to
volatile
approach.
market right now.
What's that?
That's volatile market right now, right?
It is more volatile than normal. So currencies between the big countries tend, you know, in that G7 market, which dollar euro would be one of them, tend to be a
Yep.
lot lower than what we see in commodities, right? So
Sure.
sub 15%. It might be a little bit higher right now, but the frustrating thing is they had thought about locking in what was a pretty advantageous rate about 6 8 months ago, which
Mm.
would now, you know, cost them about 15 20 million dollars.
Yep.
And they but they were so I said, okay, how, you know, what's the right way to do this? Like it feels it was shocking how similar it was to a farmer conversation because they're like, well, I don't like where the price is now. Like I want that price from back then. It's like,
Yeah.
yep, sure. And so we took a step back and talked about guiding principles on this stuff. It's like, and part of the reason they didn't pull the triggers, they're like, hey, we're not traders. Like we're not comfortable locking those things in. And talked
Mm.
about like how that attitude, the perspective that the now much lower, I think it's like a buck 13 or something dollar to the euro. Um, how saying you don't like that price actually turns you into more of a trader.
Exactly, because I don't know these guys, but I assume locking that in would have actually been a hedge for them,
That's right.
right? Yeah,
Right.
right.
Right. So because they were like, so like getting neutral would be like doing half of it? I said, no. You guys operate in US dollars. Like
Yeah, you're
anytime you
exposed.
have if you know you're going to have euro exposure, like, rolling, swapping that out, setting a hedge, right
Yeah.
now is actually what you would do. I can't imagine anybody that I would ever say you should block out everything right now. Like that's just
No, right. Yeah.
right. And so then we started to talk about how would you do that? But it it was there's my vocal filler coming in. It just it was it's always entertaining when it's not you to see the similarities between whether you're making a decision about $50,000, $500,000, or in this case, $200 million. The same psychology is still at play. The same frustrations are still at play. Nobody's great at it, right? And or I should say, very few people are great at it, and most of them are living on an island, with their own mini nuclear power plant running
That's
there,
right.
right? Like,
That's right.
uh, so the for most of us, especially if it's not the only thing we're thinking about all day, every day, we're best off optimizing for our own cash flow decisions. When we're running a commercial business where the primary business isn't a trading business, it is about cash flow. It is, hey, is that a good sale for my business? Great, done. Like, if it's nice when you can sell at better prices, there are things you can do like buy call options or other
Yeah.
ways to adjust your risk profile if you still want that exposure. But I think, as you've talked about, right, focusing on the cash flow, focusing on what's a good sale for your business is the best process. Um, and whether the market's gone up or down, a good sale is a good sale.
Yeah, because essentially when you're asking yourself, do I like the price today? You're not really asking yourself if you like the price. You're like articulating a bias, right? Like, I like the price today if I think the price is going to go down.
Yeah. But,
And I don't like it if I think it's going to go up. So
yeah.
all I'm really doing is saying I have a bias here. Yeah, and then I think about risk profile. So it's interesting you said you wouldn't have told them to sell or buy, I'm not a currency guy, all $2 million, right?
Right.
At one time, which I agree with. Part of that's because there's other moving parts to this, right? Isn't that it? Like, if you could lock in all on the same day, if I saw $150 per acre and I knew my yield, like my yield was guaranteed, my basis was set, my futures were locked, and all my crop inputs and cash rent were locked in. Okay, maybe then I do 100%, but that just doesn't work.
Well, and again, as is relevant to farming, farming's super competitive,
Exactly.
right? And if you're the only guy that sold at 4 and the market went to 6, even if 4 was profitable, that may be challenging depending on what your business plan is. I guess is what it comes down to. If you're
Yeah.
on 3,000 acres and like you're going to be on 3,000 acres, doesn't matter what anybody else does. Like
Yeah.
you're good. But if you're somebody who's expanding or otherwise directly competing with people for access or things like that, that's where I think there's an added level of complexity. And that was actually my next question to these guys is like, to your point, if you know no matter what happens in that currency market, if you lock in this level now, like your business is like that's a good position for you guys, and it's like you're not going to lose out because your competitor waited and the market moved in some weird way, and they're like, and so that becomes a strategic question that I think is really important, and a part of the reason we wouldn't out the gate like our default orientation isn't go go sell everything right now because it's a good sale price. It's
Yeah.
work
Right.
your way into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some large bugs with stingers on them buzzing around the corner of my house right now. I can't quite see all the way up, but it's very
Mhm.
distracting because they are, for me, they're big. Uh,
Bug season in Boston right
bug season.
now.
I worked outside today for the first time.
Okay.
Uh, it's been rainy for like 3 weeks, uh,
Yeah.
but yesterday, this weekend, and through today has turned really nice. So,
Do you work on one screen? Do you have a single, like, can you just work from a laptop?
I, so I can like so it actually depends on what I'm doing. I have a I have a ridiculous situation. So the screen I'm looking at you now on is the width of four 19-inch monitors, basically.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
can have four like reasonably sized things to look at.
Yeah.
Normally, I'm not looking at four different things. I'll have like a spreadsheet up, maybe something that like I'm researching from, and then like music playing, right, or something
You're
like
definitely on a Mac then, right?
that.
Yeah. No, that's
No,
PC. Okay. All
PC
right.
baby. But then I have another. So that's my this is my office. It's a laptop, but like I never take it anywhere. And
Hmm.
so that's this, and this is where the podcast equipment is and everything else. In our living room, I have my desktop PC, which is for video games mostly,
Yeah. Right.
or,
Is that
or
all they're for now?
well, it's that, or if I have and I haven't run into this in a couple years, but if I have a particularly heavy duty spreadsheet that I'm dealing with,
Sure.
that
Yeah.
computer's like much better at dealing with it.
Yeah.
And then when I work outside, I have a laptop that I
Okay.
take with me if I'm working outside or working anywhere else.
One of my favorite things is working outside, but I just don't have enough screens. I got like a 15-inch laptop. I'm used to working on three screens here, not like you, but I got two 21s and then a 15 here. I can't stand it being on on the porch.
I I have a hard time doing like coding out there,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
but anything else. So if I'm writing emails or stuff like that,
Sure.
or reading things like outside's better.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So okay, so in 2 weeks, our episode will have Kevin Bauer.
That's right.
He's agreed
Too
to
many
it.
shows.
I say
Maybe
we're
you know
recording
him though.
this. We'll say that Kevin Bauer, Kevin Bauer, Kevin Bauer, another Illinois guy.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right.
so
Taught me a whole lot about the grain business, man, when I was young in my career. So
um,
we we stay in touch. We don't talk enough, but we do stay in touch.
yeah, he I think for me, he's one of the handful of people that I feel like most naturally is able to put themselves in the shoes of a customer
Yeah,
and
agree.
like deeply empathize that, and then bring in his technical knowledge to lay on that. And it like I think there are lots of people who do it well. It feels like with him, it's like just innate.
Yeah,
I rarely do I talk to Kevin and not feel smarter afterwards.
for sure. Yeah, I agree.
Uh, so we got that. Um, we've got other folks who've mentioned, but we won't don't know what the schedule is going to look like.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to hit on, Rodney?
I'll just give you an update on progress, right? So planning progress, my neck of the woods, virtually done. I'm sure there's somebody doing a little replant here or there, and there's some 40-acre field out there. But for the most part, guys are done. Weather has not been super ideal, so a little cooler than they'd like. We're getting plenty of moisture, which is good. A little cooler than they like. Stands look really good around here, so everything came up and is the same height,
Okay.
right? That's what's
Yeah.
important. Um, Probably not getting enough heat right now, so we like to give it a little heat. That greens it up or something. I'm no agronomist. We should have an agronomist talk about that sometime. Uh, and actually, but so wet this week. That's going to keep guys out of the field. And then they're talking about some heat coming into next week. So actually, a little bit of concern for these guys now are kind of feeding nitrogen to this crop all year long, and they're a little afraid that it's going to get away from them before they cover the acre. So the corn plant get too tall
And then come
before they
back
can
out.
come back out. So, but overall, man, things look really really good where we're at.
Okay. Um, I'm going to refrain from asking for any. Well, are you back talking to guys now about? Well, it sounds like you've gotten a couple calls, so people are
Yep.
out of the cab and willing to talk to you again. And
Guys are back answering their phones. That's right. Yeah,
yeah,
nothing really exciting to talk about, which is annoying. I like volatility. I like to see the market move, and it's just kind of been a dog here lately. That's all right. We'll bide our time.
would you like to see it moving higher? I think is what you mean.
Uh, Dude, just volatility is just good in general, right? Um, I wonder if it's that absence makes the heart grow fonder. Is that the thing? Like, essentially, 470 corn maybe didn't look so good the first time, but if we get it again, boy, it would feel real good.
I mean, that's my joke.
That's right.
I'm not
That's
going to
right.
tell it now, but
We'll tell it another time.
I
Exactly.
so so I think it's worth noting almost universally, almost people don't like volatility.
Oh, really?
Really.
Hmm.
As an option trader, I like it because the opportunity. But most businesses, again, whose focus isn't trading, do not like volatility. And even a lot of certainly indices don't like it. Like it, unless your job is trading volatility or taking opportunity of big market dislocations, which isn't many people these days, you do not like most people do not like volatility. They want it to be predictable. They want that scenario where you said it's up a penny a day every day for
Yeah.
100 days. That's what they want.
Man, I think farmers like volatility. Does that match the profile of person that you would think would like volatility? Here's why I think they like it, Gabe,
Tell me.
is because they can take advantage. They don't have to sell every day. They're certainly not a buy and hold, strategy. They can like take advantage. So if we see a little pop, they can sell 10%. If we see another pop, they can sell 10%. So it's like, I mean, hopefully they do better than average, I guess, but I don't know. I think they like volatility.
It's such a fascinating idea. It may be true. Well, I mean, one of the classic ones, when I think about like what are some of the behavioral things that come in, I know that I mean, I've yet to meet somebody whose initial reaction, if they sell 10% today, that they want the market to be higher tomorrow,
Correct.
right? Which is actually what you should want.
And
Because
that
you
just
got
got
90% left to do.
guy.
Um,
I thought this guy was going to kick me out of his shed, Gabe, when he said, "Oh yeah, we lose a lot of money in our brokerage account," and I'm like, "Perfect. That's exactly what you want." And what are you talking about? Yeah, I agree. Sorry.
that's all right. So maybe in that regard, like there, I would say liking volatility for most people, unless they're trading volatility, which I don't think farmers are doing, um, it
No.
is unusual, right? It's and moreover, it's illogical, but that's okay. Like um, it, I suspect it's volatility within certain bounds.
It's within. So like now that I'm thinking about it, it's like I like volatility when the price is less than break even, right?
Because it makes
Because
you feel
I
like something's happening
gives
that
me hope.
might make it
Gives me
top
hope.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I if we were $150 in revenue, I'd be like, yeah, I'm good with, no
Let's just
volatility.
say, yeah, that's good. Yeah, yeah. Right.
Take
That's right.
our
And that I find a much more compelling position than
yeah,
just
that makes sense.
an absolute. Everybody likes volatility around here.
Yeah, good.
Sure.
Anything else you want to prove me wrong on today, Gabe?
I
Before
no,
we
I mean I think I've been a failure over and over again, but that's okay. That's what I do. I
cool.
screw up and then dust myself off and try again the next day.
Well, I appreciate you prodding me to go deeper into that crop insurance conversation. I have yada over it with farmers for, 10 years. And this is a good opportunity to show it to them. Now I got the spreadsheet. If anybody wants a spreadsheet, let me know. I'll send it to you. But
I mean,
I will say one thing that I just found out a couple weeks ago. I didn't realize that there's a cap on that harvest price.
oh, I didn't
It
know that either.
I never did. It's
Is it?
200%.
I was gonna say, is it 2x? 2x feels like a reasonable cap on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But it is, so
that's
at whatever 470 times two is, that's your cap.
yeah. That I mean, yeah, it's tough to take on an unlimited liability, even if you're the U.S. government.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, so next week or not next week, in 2 weeks, we'll have Kevin on. We'll spend a lot of time talking about volatility. Um, that's a topic I love. So maybe we'll
Yeah.
talk about volatility, smiles,
Yep.
smirks,
Love it. Yeah. Skew. It's fun.
skew, baby.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All
Well,
right.
good
And
talking to you. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
yeah, and if anybody has any topics that they want us to cover, in a timely fashion, shoot us a email, text us. I think
What what
most
e-
people.
what email address would that be, Rodney?
Oh, what are we? What are we? Let
I
me
thought it was
see.
drift and return at clearviewcommodities.com.
That's correct. Yeah. Drift
I
and
I don't
sell.
work there, but I know a guy.
That's right. I forgot about that. All right. Sounds good, Gabe. Good
Well,
to
you
see you,
said
man.
text. What number should they text?
Do we give our
We'll
cell phone
keep it the
number?
email for now.
Yeah, let's keep the email for
All
now.
right.
If you have my cell phone number, you can text me.
Hey, if you have my cell phone number, you can text me too.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Good to see you,
All right.
Gabe.
See
Couple
ya.
weeks.